Good morning, everyone. I wanted to start out with looking at some of the words in the song we just sung, and then I wanted to go to Psalm 73 and make some comments there before we have prayer. If you'll notice, this is one of my favorite songs, Farther Along. And if you noticed, about, I guess in the second stanza, I don't know what these are called because I'm not very musical. It says, "Then do we wonder why others prosper, living so wicked year after year." While there are, in the first verse, while there are others living about us, never molested, though in the wrong, then do we wonder why others prosper, living so wicked year after year. And those words really ring something true that I want to speak somewhat about today. And I want to go to the 73rd Psalm, and I'll make some further comments after that. Psalm 73, verse 1, "Truly God is good to Israel, even to such as are of a clean heart. But as for me, my feet were almost gone, my steps had well nigh slipped." Meaning, the writer, who happens to be Asaph in this case, it's not David, is confused. He's not on steady ground. "For I was envious at the foolish when I saw the prosperity of the wicked. For there are no bands in their death, but their strength is firm." No bands, no troubles, no difficulties. They are not in trouble as other men, neither are they plagued like other men. Therefore pride compasseth them about as a chain. Violence covereth them as a garment. Their eyes stand out with fatness. They have more than the heart could wish. Their eyes with fatness. They want everything and they have more than they need. They are corrupt and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily. They set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongue walketh through the earth. Therefore his people return hither, and waters of a full cup are wrung out to them. And they say, "How doth God know? And is there knowledge in the Most High?" Behold, these are the ungodly who prosper in the world. They increase in riches. Verily I have cleansed my heart in vain and washed my hands in innocency. It's vain for me to be doing to do good because of all this wickedness around, and they're the ones that prosper. For verse 14, "For all the day long have I been plagued and chastened every morning." That's living in this world trying to do good. "If I say I will speak thus, behold, I should offend against the generation of thy children. When I thought to know this, it was too painful for me." So this was all difficult. It was causing great concern because the general human thought process is, if I do good, I'll be blessed accordingly. And yet in the world we see so much wicked out there that seems to be blessed. And it's the difficulties that we face trying to live a godly life in an ungodly world. But verse 17, "Until I went into the sanctuary of God, then understood I their end. Surely thou didst set them in slippery places. Thou castest them down into destruction. How are they brought into desolation? As in a moment they are utterly consumed with terrors." This is what the wicked have in front of them. They're blessed here in so many ways so often, but what they have in front of them is horrible. Terror. As a dream when one awaketh, so, O Lord, when thou awakest, thou shalt despise their image. Thus my heart was grieved, and I was pricked in my reins. So foolish was I, and ignorant. I was as a beast before thee, not understanding this. Nevertheless, I am continually with thee. Thou hast holden me by my right hand. God's with me. Thou shalt guide me with thy counsel, and afterward receive me to glory. Whom have I in heaven but thee? And there is none upon earth that I desire beside thee. My flesh and my heart faileth, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. Even though my flesh gets weak and it fails, God is still with me. For lo, they that are far from thee shall perish. Thou hast destroyed all them that go a-whoring from thee, the wicked. But it is good for me to draw near to God. I have put my trust in the Lord God, that I may declare all thy works. This past week, I traveled on business to Arizona and Florida, and I had the distinct opportunity to fly on a plane. The planes were all crowded, packed, and everybody was wearing a mask. And it'd been a long time since I'd been out on a plane trip, largely because of the pandemic. And I have to say that I saw a general sense of a lack of kindness and courtesy from so many while I was on the trip. And I'm not saying everyone, because you can't paint with a broad brush like that. But I also had, because I was traveling, I also ended up watching a little bit more of the newscasts in the evenings when I was in the hotel, and you just see over and over this constant thrashing of the news people about the strangeness that's going on in our government and the corruption that is obviously going on there and all these things. And it brought this to my mind that we are trying desperately, and I know there are many others than just the ones in this church or even Primitive Baptists that are trying to live a godly life in an ungodly world. But it is difficult. And we can get comfort from this book. And that's really what I want to speak to you about after we do our prayer service. So, as I stated earlier, there's a lot of comfort that we get from the Bible, and it's important that we put these things in perspective, like I was speaking about out of Psalm 73. When you think about difficulties, my mind often goes to the examples in the Old Testament, because we know God's chosen people, the Jewish people, went through many trials and tribulations, and when they had, when God brought chastisement on them, it was usually because of their own poor behavior, the kinds of things we see in the world around us. But there's comfort to draw from these examples, and they also point, in many cases, to the Lord Jesus Christ and His coming. So, with that thought in mind, I immediately started thinking about the time when Jerusalem, when the northern kingdom, the Israelites in 10 of the 12 tribes in the northern kingdom, which was called Israel, were invaded by the Assyrians and dispersed, and those 10 tribes never came back. They were gone forever. and that was in 722 BC. Now, and then about, 100 plus years later, there were invasions on the southern kingdom, on Judah and the tribe of Benjamin. And if you look at the prophets that were there to provide comfort to the people, the remnant that God had always preserved for himself out of his people, these prophets were there to bring comfort or warnings or whatever to the godly people that were there in the midst of this ungodly behavior. And you guys, I'm sure, know this because our pastor is a very, very steeped in Old Testament history, and he talks to these things, but there are what's called 4 major prophets, and those 4 major prophets are called major only because the length of their books in the Bible. And then there are 12 minor prophets. And I don't like the term minor prophets because if you think for a minute, if you were a writer of an Old Testament book that God inspired that ended up in this Bible, there's nothing minor about what you did at all just because you didn't write a lot. But they pack a lot in a small area. So if we go back to kind of understanding the sequence, Jonah was one of the minor prophets. And Brother Randy's spoken about Jonah. Brother Keith gave a very good sermon a couple of Fifth Sundays ago on the book of Jonah. And so we all know Jonah and the story of the fish, etc. And Jonah Jonah went to Nineveh, and that whole story took place about 790 BC. So think the reference of 722 BC when the northern kingdom was invaded. So Jonah, the northern kingdom. So Jonah went to Nineveh, which is not in the northern kingdom, but in a different land, all right, and preached to Nineveh, and Nineveh repented, and God did not destroy Nineveh at that moment in time. A little bit later came Micah and Isaiah and in the same time frame. So there was a lot of overlap between some of the so-called major prophets like Isaiah and Daniel later, as well as some of these minor prophets like Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk is the way you're supposed to pronounce that, but since I'm from Texas, I'm just going to say Habakkuk and leave the last part off. And so Habakkuk is the, I want to focus on the book of Habakkuk. Because this story, it's only 3 chapters in this book, but it is one of those areas where you can find great comfort, and is along the lines of Psalm 73. It's also similar to the book of Job, the story of Job. There's some parallels there. So what I want to do is go to Habakkuk, and we'll start with verse 1. The burden which Habakkuk the prophet did see, O Lord, how long shall I cry, and thou wilt not hear? I even cry out unto thee of violence, and thou wilt not save. So, a lot of what this book of Habakkuk speaks to is the period of time around 612 to 605 BC, before the southern kingdom was invaded by Babylon. Now, during this period of time, previously, about 30 years before it was invaded, 31 years, I think, before or so, there was a good king, Hosea, which you've heard mentioned many times by Brother Randy. And then there was Hosea, Habakkuk. I didn't say that correctly, but he was a wicked king. He was the son of Hosea. Hosea had done some good things and tried to restore, take away idols and restore the true faith in the southern kingdom. He was the king of the southern kingdom. But when he died and his son took over, he was a wicked king, and they went right back to their idolatrous ways very, very quickly. It's not unlike what we've seen in the transition of our government leadership, even in the past few months, that we see good things happening, depending on how you perceive them, but good things happening for the country, and then suddenly we see a lack of common sense and many things that are immoral and improper that are being touted in today's world as being good things. So this is similar to what Habakkuk was dealing with at this time under this evil king. And to a large degree, this is his observations of what he was seeing. So it says again on verse 2, O Lord, how long shall I cry, and thou wilt not hear? I even cry out unto thee of violence, and thou wilt not save. Why dost thou show me iniquity, and cause me to behold grievance? For spoiling and violence are before me. I'm seeing all this wicked stuff in the world around me. And there are that raise up strife and contention. They're causing problems. Therefore the law is slack, and judgment doth never go forth. So what does that mean, the law is slack? Nobody is following the law. That is, or the law is not holding people accountable in the way that the law is supposed to. What do we see out in the world today with these rioters and various things that are happening? We see exactly that. The law is not holding them accountable. For the wicked doth compass about the righteous, therefore wrong judgment proceedeth. So the wicked are surrounding, they're all around the righteous. Basically what is happening here is Habakkuk is complaining about the moral and spiritual decay at the time, and why is God allowing this? God's being silent. He's praying. He's praying about it. Oh Lord, how long shall I cry? He's praying about it, but God's not doing anything about it that he can see. Then God answers in verse 5. Behold, ye among the heathen, and regard and wonder marvelously. And this is God, for I will work a work in your days which ye will not believe, though it be told you. For lo, I raise up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, which shall march through the breadth of the land to possess the dwelling places that are not theirs. This is the Chaldeans or the Babylonians. So what God is saying is, you see all this wicked around you, and it's just seemed like it's everywhere. And I am going to. Is there a problem with sound at all?
No, she just couldn't find it.
Okay. All right. Very good. Sorry for the interrupt. For lo, I raise up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, which shall march through the breadth of the land to possess the dwelling places that are not theirs. So God's going to use this ungodly people, this ungodly nation, Babylon, to bring chastisement on his people. That's what he's saying. And if you're Habakkuk, think about if you're here in the United States today, and we have all this evil around us, and the good Lord, and we don't know what's going to happen, but the good Lord brings an enemy like China or Russia to the United States to defeat us because he's bringing chastisement on the nation because of our wicked behavior. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen. I'm just trying to give you what it might feel like if you were in Habakkuk's place at this point in time. And God's told him this. They are terrible and dreadful. Their judgment and their dignity shall proceed of themselves. These are bad folks. Their horses also are swifter than the leopards and are more fierce than the evening wolves. And their horsemen shall spread themselves, and the horsemen shall come from far. They shall fly as the eagle that hasteneth to eat. They shall come all for violence. Their faces shall sup up as the east wind, and they shall gather the captivity as the sand. And they shall scoff at the kings, and the princes shall be a scorn unto them. They shall deride every stronghold, for they shall heap dust and take it. This is all telling that they're going to take over this land. They're just going to tear everything apart. They're going to steal everything that's good. They're going to take everything. They're going to plunder the land. Then shall his mind change, and they shall scoff at the kings. This is verse 10. They shall scoff at the kings and princes, and shall be a scorn unto them. They shall deride every stronghold, for they shall heap dust and take it, and take it. Let's go down to verse 12 now. Art thou not from everlasting, O Lord? Now this is Habakkuk now saying to God, going back and forth to God, art thou not from everlasting, O Lord my God, mine Holy One? We shall not die. O Lord, thou hast ordained them for judgment, and Almighty God, thou hast established them for correction. In other words, we're not going to die. You're going to protect us, but we're being chastised. The nation is. Thou art of purer eyes than to behold evil. This is, again, back to God from Habakkuk. And canst not look on iniquity. Wherefore lookest thou upon them that deal treacherously, and holdeth thy tongue when the wicked devoureth a man that is more righteous than he. So what he's saying right here is God, you're righteous. You're where goodness comes from. You're totally righteous, and yet how can you use this wicked people to bring chastisement on those that are more righteous than the wicked? And make us men as the fishes of the sea, as the creepy things that have no ruler over them. They take up all of them with the angle. They catch them in their net and gather them in their drag. Therefore they rejoice and are glad. Therefore they sacrifice unto their net and burn incense unto their drag. Now these are the evil people. They're treating the people there like just any old creature, like a fish or creepy things, just treating them badly, scooping them all up with their nets and hauling them away, taking them captive, treating them very badly. That's all this is that's what this is saying here. Verse 7, and then they turn around and they sacrifice to their nets, the very tools that they're using to bring this wickedness to this land. They turn around and worship those tools and worship their own behavior as if it is good. Shall they therefore empty their net and not spare continually to slay the nation? They just want to keep on doing more and more of this kind of behavior. Now we go to chapter 2, and Habakkuk says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and I will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. So what he's saying here is that I'm going to be watching to see what God does, okay? Because somehow or another, I know that there is an answer and it comes from God, and notice he said, when I am reproved, it means he's going to be corrected in his thinking. And the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon the tables, that he may run that readeth it. That simply means that it's very easy to read. You're going to write this vision down. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. Now, in the book of Hebrews and in the book of Romans and the book of Galatians, the book of Hebrews comments about it will not tarry. And it's a prophecy of Jesus Christ. So this is both a prophecy of that, and it's also talking about the coming thing that God has been discussing in this book. Verse 4, behold, his soul, which is lifted up, is not upright in him. Now that is referring to the Babylonians. Again, behold, his soul, which is lifted up, is not upright in him. It's pride. The Babylonians have great pride in what they're doing, the plundering of this nation, and their strength and their power. And then right opposite of that it says, but the just shall live by his faith. This is pride versus faith. This is the battle that's going on here. Romans chapter 1 verse 17 and Galatians 3:11 both quote Habakkuk, this portion, the just shall live by his faith. The Apostle Paul quotes it multiple times. Yea, also, because the transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. They're just wicked people, and they just are taking everything they can possibly take. Shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him that increaseth that which is not his? How long, and to him that ladeth himself with thick clay? They're just collecting stuff. And woe is to him that does this. Now, in the rest of this chapter, there's 5 woes that take place that are outlined here. That one's the first one. And it's really highlighting the pride and the arrogance of the Babylonian people. All right, so keep in mind that Habakkuk is saying, God, why would you have more wicked people come and bring chastisement on the more righteous? And why are they getting away with this, in essence? It's really a lot of what is stated in Psalm 73. Verse 9, woe to him that coveteth an evil covetousness to his house, that he may set his nest on high, that he may be delivered from the power of evil. So not only do they go out and try to get all this stuff, they're very possessive of what they do get, and they try to keep others from getting it, so they're always worried somebody's going to steal it. I've heard many examples of very, very wealthy men who are so possessive of their wealth that they're never satisfied, they're never happy, they're constantly miserable because they're worried they're going to lose even just a small piece of it. Verse 12, woe to him that buildeth a town with blood and establish a city by iniquity. So they're going to build up whatever they're going to use these spoils, and they're going to build up something from those spoils. And woe to him that buildeth a town with blood. You do these evil things, you build things up in evil ways, woe to you. Woe to you. So much of the time, people think, and we're all guilty of this because we're all human and we're all sinners, but many people who are not children of God simply think it's perfectly fine to steal or plunder for gain. And that when you get that gain, it's yours and you get to keep it. I'm telling you, that is not blessed gain. And it will not serve you in the long run. And if you're one of God's people and you do that, one of His children, you're going to get chastised for it. You'll end up losing more than you gained in the first place. Some way or another, it will not be gained to you. Verse 15, woe unto him that giveth his neighbor drink, that puttest thy bottle to him, and makest him drunken, also that thou mayest look on their nakedness. Take advantage of people. Doing things, giving them more wine than they need. Well, we can say it in today's world, giving them drugs. Things they don't need. To take advantage of them. To cheat them. To steal from them. And other manners of wickedness that are not appropriate to speak of in the pulpit. Verse 16, thou art filled with shame for glory. Drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of the Lord right hand shall be turned unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be thy glory. For the violence of Lebanon shall cover thee, and the spoil of beasts which made them afraid, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land of the city, and all that dwell within. What profiteth the graven image that the maker thereof hath graven it, the molten image and a teacher of lies, that the maker of his work trusteth therein to make dumb idols? What profiteth graven images? What profiteth idols? There is no profit in it. Verse 19, woe unto him that saith to the wood, awake, to the dumb stone, arise, it shall teach. Behold, it is laid over with gold and silver, and there is no breath at all in the midst of it. It's an idol. You can put gold on it, you can put silver on it, but it is nothing of value. Nothing of value. Verse 20, but the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. The Lord's in his holy temple. The Lord is on his throne. He is in control. At this time, in this message, he's in control. At this moment in our life, he's on his throne. He is in control. No matter what all is going on out there. And if we go back to verse 14, which I skipped, I do want to also say, for the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. At some point, everybody's going to know of the glory of God. So these 5 woes is these are the things that are going to bring accountability to the Babylonians. So this is the wicked, and they're not going to get away either. And that's the message, what's being delivered here. Yes, I'm going to bring these wicked people in for chastisement because of your disbelief in that nation at that time, just like what we see in the world that we live in today. And I'm going to bring chastisement to all of that. but the ones that are evil are going to be chastised also. And their end is much worse than those of us that are trying to live a godly life in an ungodly world. So then we go to chapter 3. Chapter 3, a prayer of Habakkuk, the prophet, upon Signoth. Now what that is representing is that this is really a song. It follows the pattern of Psalms, okay? So this is a prayer of Habakkuk, but it's also, in a sense, put to music, if you will. But it needs to be understood that it's after the similarity of Psalms. O Lord, I have heard thy speech and was afraid, O Lord. Revive thy work in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years make known. In wrath remember mercy. Lord, please remember mercy on us. God came from Teman and the Holy One from Mount Paran. Selah, which is just a pause, like in a song when you make a pause. His glory covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise. Now God's coming from the east. That's what's represented by Teman and Mount Paran. He's coming from the east, like the sun rising in the morning. And the sun comes up in the morning and the light starts to shine. And it says, God came from the east, and his brightness was as the light. He had horns coming out of his hands. That's another form of light. And there was the hiding of his power. Before him went the pestilence, and burning coals went forth at his feet. So what this chapter is reviewing in this prayer from Habakkuk are all the marvelous things that the good Lord has done for the children of Israel from the beginning of their existence, really going all the way back to Abraham. But a lot of this is referring to the Exodus in that period of time. And it's doing it in a prose, in a kind of a poetic manner. He stood and measured the earth. He beheld and drove asunder the nations, and the everlasting mountains were scattered. The perpetual hills did bow, and his ways are everlasting. I saw the tents of Cushan in affliction, and the curtains of the land of Midian did tremble. So God's there, and the tents of Cushan, these are nations that are around where Canaan's land was. They weren't in Canaan's land, but they were around. And they felt the effect of God. Was the Lord displeased against the rivers? Was thine anger against the rivers? Was thy wrath against the sea, that thou didst ride upon thine horses and thy chariots of salvation? It's talking about the parting of the Red Sea and the chariots that went through, and the destruction of the Egyptian army in the Red Sea. Thy bow was made quite naked, according to the oaths of the tribes, even thy word. Selah. Again, a pause in the song. Thou didst cleave the earth with rivers, referring to, in all likelihood, water coming out of rocks for the Israelites when they needed to drink. And this created rivers of water. The mountains saw thee, and they trembled. The overflowing of water passed by. The deep uttered his voice and lifted up his hands on high. Again, referring to the parting of the Red Sea. That the water passed by and the deep uttered his voice, as making a lot of noise when it was held back. The sun and moon stood still in their habitation. At the light of thine arrows thy went, and at the shining of thy glittering spear. Thou didst march through the land in indignation. Thou didst thresh the heathen in anger. Thou wentest forth for the salvation of thy people, even for salvation with thine anointed. Thou woundest the head out of the house of the wicked by discovering the foundation unto the neck. Selah. Thou didst strike through with his staves the head of his villages. This is the destruction of evil in those days, that that God did for his chosen people. Verse 16, when I heard, my belly trembled, my lips quivered at the voice. Rottenness entered into my bones, and I trembled in myself, that I might rest in the day of trouble. When he cometh up unto the people, he will invade them with his troops. So this is Habakkuk saying that when he heard all this, that God was giving him, my belly trembled, my lips quivered at the voice, rottenness into my bones. I was very afraid. Although the fig tree, he was, in a way, coming to himself and recognizing all that God has done. Verse 17, although the fig tree shall not blossom, neither shall fruit be in the vines, the labor of the olive shall fail, and the fields shall yield no meat, the flock shall be cut off from the fold, and there shall be no herd in the stalls. So this is calamity. That's what this is talking about. There's no fig. The fig tree's not blooming. There's no fruit in the vines. Everything's failing. The fields shall yield no meat. This is bad times, like famine, if you will. Doesn't say famine, but these are bad times. And he says this, although the fig tree and blah, even in these worst of times where everything is destroyed, which is what's going to happen to Jerusalem in 586 BC. Now this is talking about this before it happened, but the evil in the world around them is what he's recognizing and saying, even when that time comes, that you're going to send the Babylonians. And they start in 605 BC, and then they come back in 586 BC, and they completely destroy the temple, Solomon's temple, and destroy the city of Jerusalem. And that is wiping everything out. And in essence, what this is saying, yet, verse 18, I will rejoice in the Lord, I will joy in the God of my salvation. The Lord God is my strength, and he will make my feet like hinds' feet, and he will make me to walk upon mine high places, to the chief singer on my stringed instruments. So, the Lord God is his strength, and he will make my feet like hinds' feet, like very sturdy, very capable, put me on firm ground. He will take care of me. And this is a song to the chief singer. Again, going back to the song. Now, why is the song important? Well, if you start from the beginning and you come to the back, if I try to summarize this, Habakkuk started out in great fear of what was to come. And he didn't understand it. And he was questioning why God would do these things. He was asking. So he went from fear to what? Faith in the end. Here he's saying in verse 18, I will rejoice in the Lord. I will joy in God of my salvation. What did Asaph say at the end of the 73rd Psalm? Basically the same thing. He went from a low, down and out place to the mountaintop. It even says in verse 19, make me to walk upon mine high places. So he went from depression to on top of the mountaintop. Okay, because he knew this was from the Lord, and the Lord was on his throne, and he was in control, and his faith in God would bring them through. God would reserve always a remnant for him, no matter what. And that's been the case. I tried to speak on a remnant several months ago, and all through the Old Testament into the New Testament, God's always preserved a remnant for himself out of all the people. Judgment and salvation. Judgment and salvation. God judged, chastised for the wicked behavior with a wicked people, and yet there was salvation at the end. This is the story of what God does for us. This is what he did for us by sending Jesus Christ to die for our sins. We live in a wicked world, and sometimes it seems less wicked, and other times it seems more wicked. And it is our duty to hold on to that faith and practice it, use it. God gave it to us. That's where it came from. Look at that faith always and know that no matter what happens, if we lose our jobs, our house, our cars, whatever, God is going to take care of us. And in the end, the wicked, the not God's people, they're going to get theirs. They're going to get theirs just because we don't see it. So you look at that song, Tried and Tempted. We don't understand it right now, but someday we will understand it. This is the nature of the history. So you can read these minor prophets, and they give you great revelation and hope through the message that they deliver. And I hope in some way this is uplifting. You know, Brother Randy spoke about giants last week, and that was another form of the same challenges that are taking place here. And the key, this is what happened at that time, and people felt the same way then that we often feel today. And we should recognize that. Ecclesiastes 1:9 says, no new thing under the sun. There is no new thing under the sun. The same thing goes over and over and over. We just need to stay close to the good Lord in every way that we possibly can. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you found some value in this.